So you're thinking about starting a K-1 Fiancé visa application for your Colombian fiancé, but you don't really know how the process works. My name is Camilo Rincon. I am an attorney. We have offices in Colombia and in the United States to be able to help you during the entire immigration application process. So in this video, I'm going to give you kind of the summary of how the fiancé visa application works. The first thing you should know is there are 3 stages or 3 federal agencies that need to review your application before that application is approved. All right. The first review happens with USCIS. That's the immigration service, but everyone calls it USCIS. USCIS stands for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. So the main thing, or what everyone asks, is what form do I have to fill out for that application or for that stage? Is the I-129F. Careful, because there's another form called the I-129. That's not the right form, it's the I-129F. On top of that, the immigration service is going to charge you to review your case. Currently, what they're charging is $675, but whenever you're getting ready to file your case, you should double check to make sure the government has not changed the filing fees. All right, but as of right now, it's $675. Now, in terms of additional things that need to be included in the application, I will give you kind of the basics of what needs to be in the application. So number 1 is evidence that you're really a U.S. citizen. So you would include things like photocopies of your valid passport, maybe a photocopy of your birth certificate. If you're born outside of the U.S. and later became a citizen, you will probably have something called the naturalization certificate, so you could include that again, but that's only if you were born outside of the US and later in life became a citizen, the naturalization certificate. Another thing that you will have to include is if you've been married before, you will have to include either your divorce decree or if you're a widow or widower, you will have to include a copy of your prior spouse's death certificate. All right. Another thing that's super important in this initial stage is include what they call letters of intent, which is one letter from your fiance, your Colombian fiance, where he or she will declare that they have full intent on marrying you once that visa is approved. And the same thing from you. You will do a letter or an affidavit where you declare your sincere intent to marry your fiance once that application is approved. All right. Another essential of this application is sending in evidence. The government needs to see evidence that you have a real relationship so that they can approve your case. So again, there's a ton of evidence that you can send in. There's nothing required. So there's not specific evidence that you should send in, but there's certain things that are helpful. So number one of the things that we think are, super helpful, photographs. So maybe print out 50, 60, 70 photographs and include them in the application. Photographs, number 1, should be hopefully spaced out in time, not pictures of the exact same day, maybe in different locations. So if you've traveled with your fiance, that would be wonderful. Include pictures of trips that you've taken together. If you have pictures with friends, so your fiance, you, friends, that would be wonderful. If you have pictures with family members, again, all that stuff is great. Something that's useful for the officer who's going to review it is include a detailed description. So you would say, officer, this picture was taken on this date. In the picture, you will find, my family, my fiance, where the picture was taken. So all that stuff, photographs are awesome. Now, other things that you can include, for example, if you've traveled together, you can include things like itineraries, right? So if you've taken trips together, you can include things like boarding passes if you have them to prove that you have indeed either traveled to see your fiance or that you've traveled together. So that's wonderful. Again, there's no evidence that you have to include, but these things are super useful. Other things that are useful are letters from friends and relatives where they certify or declare that you have a real relationship. Things like financial records. So if you help out your fiance financially and you wire them money, those things are super helpful. So you include bank statements or international wires if you have them. Again, if you don't stress out. There are many other types of evidence that you can include to prove that you have a real relationship. All right. So you submit that entire application package with the forms, with the payment, with the evidence, with proof of citizenship, with letters of intent. So again, it's probably going to be a pretty big package. And the immigration service is going to receive it. They'll issue something called a notice of action. Well, they're going to confirm that they have received your case. They're going to confirm that they've received your payment. And more importantly, they're going to issue you a case number. So that case number is super helpful for us attorneys. Is essential so we can start calling USCIS and asking, hey, USCIS, how's the case looking? Do you guys need anything else? Are there any requests for evidence that have been issued? So again, the case number is super useful to be able to follow up and monitor the case. All right. So after that initial stage is done, immigration has only 3 options. They will hopefully say, congratulations, that first stage has been approved. That's what we all want. Second option is when immigration says, look, we need a little more evidence. The official name for that is a request for evidence. And in the immigration world, we know them as RFEs. RFEs are requests for evidence where they say, look, we want to see something else. Right? And the third option, which obviously no one wants, is what they called a notice of intent to deny. So if they detect something extremely serious with your application, they can say, look, we intend on denying this. And obviously that's not good news. So once you do get that letter that says congratulations approved, that letter is called the notice of action. They will let you know the case is being sent to the second stage. Now, the great news about the second stage, there are 2 great news. Number 1, it's free. That's always good. And number 2, you don't have to do anything. That's always great, right? So it's free. You don't have to do anything. Why? Because it's an internal review. So what happens is the Immigration Service will send your application to the second agency called the National Visa Center. That's an office that belongs to the Department of State, and they do an internal review, and 99.9% of the time, they will require nothing from you. However, what your attorney will do, if you have a good attorney, we usually call number 1 USCIS, and we will say, hey, USCIS, we know this application was approved on this date. Can you confirm that it has in fact been sent to the second stage? That's important to do so we can make sure the case is moving forward as it should. And the other thing is your attorney will write an email or what they call a public inquiry to the National Visa Center saying, hey, National Visa Center, did you guys get that case from USCIS? That's important. So you confirm that the case did move to that second stage as it should. All right. Now, once you get the great news that your case has been sent to the third and final agency, and that third and final agency is going to be the embassy. So that's called the consular process. So if you're doing the case through the U.S. Embassy in Colombia, careful, because as of right now, there's a mistake that a lot of people make, and that's people get so excited that they've been informed the case has been sent to the embassy that they jump the gun. So they will start doing everything for the embassy, but careful. The embassy, especially in Colombia, is really strict. They will say, don't start anything. Don't start that last stage until we tell you, meaning until the embassy tells you that they're ready. All right. So what's going to happen, at least as of right now, is that the embassy is going to send you an email saying, congratulations, we're now ready to move forward with your case. So again, things could change, but as of right now, the embassy is saying, don't jump the gun. We don't want you guys processing the case and starting the embassy process until we let you know that we're ready. All right. So let's assume you get that awesome email that says, yeah, move forward with your case. That will come from the U.S. Embassy in Bogotá. Several things will have to be done. Number 1, the U.S. citizen will have to do what they call an affidavit of support. All right, but careful because there are 2. So they will do the I-134. That's the correct affidavit of support as of today's date for fiancé visa applications. Now, the applicant, meaning the foreign fiancé, the Colombian fiancé, will fill out a form called the DS-160. That's a multi-purpose form, so it's done for tourist visas, for student visas, for exchange visas called J1s, but it's also used for fiancé visas. But careful, because once you start filling it out, because this is a multi-purpose form, you have to choose. You have to say, I'm doing the DS-160 for a fiancé visa. All right. So you do the DS-160, you submit it, you pay the embassy fee. As of today's date is $265. Another thing you have to do is now you have to schedule a medical exam. So the foreign fiancé, the person who's applying for the fiancé visa, will have to do a medical exam with a doctor who's licensed by the embassy. They're called panel physicians. So careful, it's not getting a medical with your family doctor. No, it's getting a medical with the embassy's doctor. All right, so there are only a few of those. They're either 3 or 4 depending on the embassy. So there are very few embassy doctors. So you will do that medical exam, or your foreign fiancé will do that medical exam. Another thing that has to be done at the embassy stage is what they call biometrics. So your foreign fiancé, your Colombian fiancé, will get fingerprinted. The embassy will take a picture. That doesn't happen at the embassy. That happens at what they call the applicant support center. All right. So that's who does fingerprints and photographs. And lastly, what everyone waits for is the interview, right? So the interview is where an embassy officer, a consular officer, will interview your Colombian fiancé, and that's when the officer can decide or will decide whether they can approve your case. Now, the great news is that as of today's date, the U.S. Embassy in Colombia will allow your foreign fiance to attend and will allow the U.S. citizen petitioner to also attend. So that's wonderful. The two of you can go. We'll interview. And again, in 99% of the cases, the embassy will decide right away whether they can go ahead and approve that case. In some cases at the interview, they will say, look, we need more evidence, or we're still waiting for the medical. But again, in most cases, they will give you the good news at that interview. All right. So that's kind of the basics of how this process works. If you want help with your application, feel free to reach out. In another video, we're going to explain to you what happens after that fiancé visa gets approved. Because after it gets approved and you marry your fiancé on U.S. soil, you will you apply for a green card. That's called the adjustment of status. So in a later video, we're going to explain to you what happens after that fiancé visa is approved, which is the adjustment of status. So again, if you guys want help with your application process, feel free to reach out.